Okay, I just started the webinar, so it looks like we are good to go. I see participants joining us, entering the room now. So we are just going to give it a few seconds for people to join in. Okay, looks like we're ready to get started. So good evening, everyone. Thank you all for your attendance this evening. Tonight is our community workshop, and we are hosting this presentation this evening with the city's consultant on the general plan update. We'll go ahead and start with a PowerPoint presentation. So Brent Gibbons with Mintier Harnish is going to be providing that this evening, along with his team. I'll go ahead and just introduce the city staff, Debbie Chamberlain with the City of San Ramon Community Development Director, Lauren Barr, the Planning Manager, Ryan Driscoll is our Associate Planner, and my name again is Cindy Yee. I'm with the City of San Ramon as the Project Manager. So Brent, if you want to go ahead and share your screen, be great.
Perfect. Thank you, Cindy. Okay. Let me know if we're seeing the PowerPoint. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you everybody for attending tonight. It's great to be with all of you for the first community workshop with the City of San Ramon, as we're going to go through the general plan update and the different components of tonight's meeting. So Cindy had gone through the city staff, and I'm going to introduce our team, Mintier Harnish. Mintier Harnish is a planning and consulting firm based out of Sacramento. My name is Brent Gibbons. I'm the project manager. Here tonight is Jim Harnish. He's the project director, and he is the principal and owner of Mintier Harnish. Mintier Harnish was established in 1985. We're a general planning consulting firm. General plans are our bread and butter. That's what we do primarily, but we also work on housing elements, zoning code updates, and specific plans. We've worked on over 60 general plans across the state of California, several here within the Bay Area, and then in Southern California in the Central Valley. Who's not in attendance tonight and shown on the screen here is Jordan Cow. He is our assistant project manager as well. If you will follow us throughout this entire process, you will get familiar with the three of us shown here on the screen. Now, this team is just not the three of us at Mintier Harnish. It's a larger group effort collaborating with the city and the Planning Commission, City Council, city commissions and committees, and then with all of you, the community members. So I wanted to highlight some of our teaming partners which are taking part in this effort with us. So we have Fair and Peers. Fair and Peers will focus on mobility and circulation aspects of this project as they relate to the general plan and also as they relate to the housing element update. We have VTA, that's Veronica Tam Associates. VTA is going to handle the housing element portion of this update, and we'll work in tandem with city staff to make sure that we complete it by the statutory deadlines that the state requires. And we also have Rincon Consultants. Rincon is our environmental sub-consultant. They're going to handle the environmental impact report and assist with general plan policies and elements. And they're also going to assist VTA with the housing element update. And lastly, we have the Nadelson Dale group. Nadelson Dale is going to handle all economic development related aspects of the general plan throughout the process. Now, I wanted to point out we have two other members here tonight who are going to speak on both the housing element and the climate action plan. We have Brenna Weatherby with Rincon and Kelsey Bennett, who will speak shortly. So this project that San Ramon is undertaking and just happened to kick off earlier this summer is a three-part project. First, we have the overall general plan update, we have a housing element update, and we have a climate action plan update, also known as a CAP. So I'm going to walk through the portion of the general plan and provide some more context for this portion of the update. Once I complete my portion, I will hand it off to our other two teaming partners to explain the other two components of this effort the city is undergoing. So a general plan. If you're not familiar with it, a general plan is required for every city, county, and town within the state of California. I like to think of a general plan as a blueprint. It basically provides a long-term vision and framework for a community. A general plan is composed of several chapters or elements, and each of these elements serve a series of topical areas, everything relating from land use to community health to mobility or circulation. That includes your transportation, hazards and safety. Housing is an element of the general plan, but as through the state of California, it's on a separate track, and we'll get into that a little later. Overall, a general plan is supposed to help guide your decision makers, so your planning commission and your city council, as they make decisions for the city's future. And the general plan, in essence, is supposed to capture the vision for the community. So as we move forward through this process, we'll start to tweak the general plan in areas that meet the expectations of the community and reflect changes in state law that better reflect San Ramon going forward from 2021 onward. So the way I like to think of a general plan is pretty much summed up in the graphic I have for you here on the screen. The best way to think of it is a general plan is foundational. So it's the primary guiding document. It's general, hence its name. It's comprehensive in nature, and it looks out long-term. So it's a long-term guiding document. Built onto the general plan are several other planning documents or aspects that you might be familiar with. So for instance, your zoning or your zoning regulations, your subdivision maps, and your building permits. What's important to realize is in this pyramid structure, each of those components implement the general plan. So your zoning implements your general plan land use designations and provides all of your development standards and regulations. So how high a fence can be, where is a use allowed, and so forth. Your subdivision maps, that guides future subdivision, residential developments, commercial or industrial. That's built on your zoning. So that's implemented and moves up the pyramid. And then lastly, building permits. That's the final step as part of this process. So that just gives you a broad overview of where the general plan stands in the pecking order of planning documents. So you're probably wondering, San Ramon, didn't they just update their general plan? Well, you're not too far off. The last update was completed in 2015. And as part of this effort, the 2015, which was known as the 2035 general plan, as part of this effort, the city has recognized that many of the goals, policies, and programs are still applicable. They have served the community well. So as part of this update, this is not a comprehensive update. This means that we are not going through every goal and policy and starting anew or starting with a new vision. We're just building on the success of the 2035 general plan and making modifications where needed for emerging issues, to reflect changes in state law, and most importantly is to merge both the housing element and the climate action plan into this effort. So this process with the 3 projects, it's a multi-year process going from 2021 all the way to 2023. It includes the 3 that I had talked about, the general plan, the housing element, and the CAP. And then lastly, there's some zoning ordinance amendments which come out of those 3 documents. So since we make some tweaks in the general plan or tweaks per your housing element, we'll need to make some modifications to your zoning at the end. So we're aiming to get this entire project wrapped up by early 2023. So the purpose of the update is to really move forward with the 6th cycle housing element, which Brennan will touch on. And the scope is to establish internal consistency amongst the new housing element, any changes in state law, and also the climate action plan. So we want all these documents to be consistent. It's required by state law that general plans are consistent with other associated documents, including your zoning. So we want to ensure that the city is in full compliance moving forward. I do want to point out that as part of this update, which is technical in nature, we are not going to revisit the vision as part of the 2035 general plan, and there are no changes recommended to the urban growth boundary as part of this effort. So we just want to make that clear on the upfront. So overall project timeline. This is a very complex project, similar to your 2015 update. It's divided into 9 phases. We kicked off the project with the city earlier this summer through phase 1, which is known as project initiation. It included a kickoff meeting. It established some community outreach protocols and other outreach aspects that all of you will be a part of over the next 2 years. We've now shifted into what's known as the assets, issues, and opportunities. This is number 2. This is laying the groundwork for all 3 updates of the plan moving forward. So we're currently in phase 2. And then phase 3 is our next step where we start to analyze existing conditions. So it provides a foundation for the project moving forward. Phase 4 is going to be the housing element. 5 is the general plan. So that's our policy document. That's where we reevaluate your goals, policies, and programs. And 6 is the climate action plan. Now on this linear scale, you'll notice that 4, 5, and 6, they're in a sequential order. But what's important is because the housing element is on a statutory deadline, which needs to be completed by the end of 2022, phases 4, 5, and 6 are going to actually happen simultaneously. So there's a lot of work coming up and a lot of outreach opportunities for everyone to take part in. Lastly, we round out environmental review. That's to make sure that we provide environmental impact report to analyze the plan for any significant or unavoidable impacts. 8, that's what we always hope for with these projects, is a successful adoption. And then 9, those are the technical zoning amendments that come after the fact when we need to make tweaks to other planning documents to ensure consistency. So that is an overall quick dive into the general plan. That's part 1 of this project. I am going to have Brenna Weatherby with Rincon introduce the housing element and what to expect through the 6th cycle. Brenna?
Thank you, Brent. Again, hi everyone. My name is Brenna Weatherby. I'm with Rincon Consultants. Just here to give you a little update and a little background on housing elements and how those will work into the general plan update that is taking place. So the housing element is one of the 8 mandatory elements in the city's general plan. It's governed by the California Government Code, as is the general plan. However, this element is unique in that it's required to be updated every 8 years in accordance with the RENA cycle and associated planning period. And it is the only general plan element with that requirement. The certification deadline for jurisdictions in the Association of Bay Area Governments, or ABAG region, like San Ramon, is January 31st, 2023. Next slide. The housing element covers 4 broad categories that you will see here on your screen. The development of a community profile, including socioeconomic demographics and housing stock characteristics, allows for the analysis of existing and projected housing needs in the city. The housing element also includes a look at various governmental and non-governmental constraints to housing to determine where barriers may exist. Now, governmental constraints include things like land use and zoning controls, development fees and city policies, while non-governmental constraints include things like the cost of land, the availability of financing, construction costs, and environmental impacts. The housing element must also provide information on housing resources across the city, including the identification of sites that can be used for future residential development in order to meet the RENA requirement, which we'll talk about in just a minute. Housing sites for all economic segments of the community must be identified, along with housing for our aging population, persons with special needs, and emergency shelters. The discussion on housing resources includes information on programs for the preservation of housing. And finally, the housing element provides a plan for future housing in the community. This includes the development of goals, policies, and programs with quantified objectives that support the plan for housing. Resources to achieve these goals, such as federal resources and state financing that's available to builders and cities looking to finance residential projects, is also identified and discussed in the housing element. Next slide. Failing to meet the state requirements can result in significant penalties. Now, we don't throw this out here to scare anybody, but it is important to recognize that there are penalties associated with not completing a housing element and not meeting the required deadlines. Given the current housing crisis in California, each year the state legislature introduces new laws that increase and expand the penalties for noncompliance, as well as impose limitations on local controls affecting housing production. As mentioned earlier, state law does require a jurisdiction to update their housing element on an 8-year cycle, consistent with the region's RENA allocation, and failing to achieve certification by HCD's deadline results in the jurisdiction having to update their housing element on a 4-year cycle rather than the 8-year cycle. Under Assembly Bill 101, jurisdictions failing to timely adopt a local housing element may be fined tens of thousands of dollars per month until HCD determines compliance. In addition, failing to certify a housing element can result in a jurisdiction's general plan being deemed inadequate and invalid. And this leaves the jurisdiction open to potential litigation regarding the validity of land use decisions. And finally, under Senate Bill 2, jurisdictions that do not have an approved HCD certified housing element are not eligible for grant funding. Next slide. Now we want to put into context how the RENA is created and how it eventually ends up in the local jurisdictions. And the process starts at the state level with the California Department of Housing and Community Development, also known as HCD. California Government Code requires HCD to develop a methodology to create the RENA allocation for each Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO. There are 18 MPOs across the state of California, but in this presentation, we'll be focusing on the ABAG region since that's where San Ramon is located. HCD's RENA methodology is created using population projections from the Department of Finance and regional population estimates taken from each MPO's regional transportation plan. So once the statewide RENA allocation is determined, they issue that allocation to the MPO, in this case, ABAG. ABAG is then tasked with creating a separate methodology to distribute those units across the region. This methodology must be approved by HCD, and then those units are provided to each jurisdiction. Each jurisdiction, in this case, San Ramon, is responsible for planning for their fair share of the regional RENA allocation as directed by HCD or ABAG's methodology. Next slide. ABAG's methodology for the distribution of the 6-cycle RENA is based on regional data and factors. This methodology is very nuanced and can be really confusing, but we thought that it was important and worthwhile to run through it briefly here to provide some background and context for how these numbers are generated. The goal of ABAG's methodology is to ensure that jurisdictions accommodate their fair share of each income category. ABAG planners started the RENA allocation process by taking a look at the total number of units assigned to the region. This number is the 441,176 number that you see here on your screen. And then that number was further allocated across multiple income categories that you will also see on your screen. Very low income units are categorized as units that are affordable to persons earning between 31 and 50% of the area median income, or AMI, while low income units are units for persons earning between 51 and 80% of the AMI. Moderate income units are for persons earning between 81 and 120% of the AMI, and above moderate income units are considered affordable to persons earning greater than 120% of the AMI. Next, ABAG applied weighted factors related to access to high opportunity areas and job proximity. Each jurisdiction received a score based on these factors. This score, factored with growth forecasts from the Plan Bay Area 2050 blueprint, resulted in the jurisdictional RENA allocations. Next slide. San Ramon received a total RENA allocation of 5,111 units. These units were allocated across the multiple income categories that I mentioned previously, and you'll see them here again, each distinction between each category on your screen. 1,497 units were allocated to the very low income category, with 862 units allocated to the low income category. 767 units allocated to the moderate income category, and 1,985 units, or 39% of the total number of units, were allocated to the above moderate income category. These are the number of units that the city will need to plan for in its housing element for the next 8 years. You'll also see on this slide that the total number of units allocated to San Ramon is much higher than the allocation for the current planning period. This is a trend that is being seen in jurisdictions across the state. Next slide. So how will San Ramon plan for future residential units and meet the RENA allocation? As we start this process, we want to hear from you. The image on your screen depicts an interactive map that's currently available on the city's website. And when you go and visit this map, you'll be able to grab and drag the housing icons to show where you feel that future housing should be located. Next slide. And there are a number of steps that our team will take to compile the sites inventory or sites analysis. And we have already started this process. So first, we'll take a look at pending and approved projects, residential development projects that have an application on file at the city or have been approved but have not yet pulled building permits by July 1st of next year can be counted towards the RENA allocation. Next, we'll be evaluating sites across the city that have appropriate residential zoning designations and can accommodate residential development by each income category that we showed earlier. Now, sometimes rezoning is required in order to meet the RENA allocation. An HCD does require densities of at least 25 dwelling units per acre for planning purposes for a project to qualify as appropriate for low and very low income housing. Next slide. So speaking of densities, we thought it'd be fun to provide a bit more information on what residential densities actually look like. So this portion of the presentation isn't interactive, so you'll have to just guess in your head at home. Looking at the image on the screen, do you think that the density of this project is A, 15 units per acre, B, 25 units per acre, C, 35 units per acre, or D, 45 units per acre? So the correct answer here is 25 dwelling units per acre. Next screen. And just one more example for comparison, looking at the image on the screen, do you think that the density of this project is 32 units per acre, 42 units per acre, 52 units per acre, or 62 units per acre? The answer is actually 62 dwelling units per acre. Next slide. Besides complying with the city's RENA, housing elements for the 6th cycle have become more complicated due to the amount of state housing legislation that has been adopted over the past few years. And in this table, you'll see the more significant legislation, and I'd like to direct your attention to a few in particular. Next slide. First, SB 35, also referred to as the Affordable Housing Streamlined Approval Bill. If HCD finds that a jurisdiction's RENA goals are not being timely satisfied, SB 35 requires cities and counties to streamline review and approval of eligible affordable housing projects by providing a ministerial approval process, exempting such projects from environmental review under CEQA and the public hearing process. Next slide. SB 330, or the Housing Crisis Act, introduces an even more expedited review process for residential development projects than SB 35, and it prohibits cities from imposing growth caps or moratoriums on housing projects or plans. Next slide. Under SB 166, a city cannot reduce residential density on a property without concurrently rezoning another property to make up the lost units. Furthermore, if a city approves a project that results in a density that is lower than the housing plan had originally identified, it must rezone another property to make up the difference. Next slide. And finally, SB 229 has made numerous changes to law pertaining to the development of accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, and changes may be needed to be made to the city's zoning ordinance to comply with state law. Next slide. So with that, I will turn it over to Kelsey to talk about climate action plans.
Okay, thanks, Brenna. So now we'll discuss the city's climate action plan update effort that is currently starting. So what is a climate action plan? And a climate action plan, or a CAP for short, is a jurisdiction's plan for addressing climate change, specifically via reducing a community's greenhouse gas, or GHG, emissions levels. And in a nutshell, GHGs are gases that trap heat in the atmosphere. And the main community GHGs are carbon dioxide, nitrous oxide, and methane, for those of you into your chemistry and how that looks here on the slide. Next slide. So, and why is climate action planning important? So overall, as the GHG levels continue to increase and threaten our health and safety, CAPs are becoming more important than ever. Primarily, CAPs set reduction goals for community GHG emissions. They establish a time frame to meet those goals. They plan for how community growth will affect emissions, and they also establish a framework for ongoing measurement of GHGs. And state law, specifically SB 32, requires every jurisdiction to reduce its fair share of GHG emissions and to meet the state's emissions goals. Now, the previous CAP addressed meeting state goals for 2020, and this CAP update will establish actions to meet state goals for 2030 and also to show progress to meet the state's ultimate goal of carbon neutrality by 2045. And with the co-benefits of lower energy costs, reduced air pollution, and supported economic development, the reduction of GHGs also helps improve the quality of life for residents in the community. Next slide. And so what is the update of this CAP up? What is the scope of this CAP update? After you account for state and regional laws and programs that reduce GHG emissions on a larger scale, such as increased vehicle fuel economy standards and more energy efficient new development, the remaining amount of GHG reductions that are needed to achieve the community's fair share of emissions reductions guides the extent of city actions that are needed to occur to meet the targets. So therefore, as shown in the red here on the slide, it's therefore determining and developing the city's GHG reduction actions is the scope of this CAP update. Next slide. So various CAP updates and CAPs address various sectors that are pertinent to that community. And this CAP update will address sectors that both result in emissions occurring within the community, as well as that the city has the ability to influence. And these sectors include residential and commercial building energy, transportation, inorganic and organic waste, water and wastewater, carbon sequestration, and that's where we work with nature to draw GHGs from the atmosphere into the plants and the land. And then municipal, and that's anything related to city buildings, operations, and land. Next slide, please. And finally, what are the climate action planning steps? To give an overview, the city first starts with preparing an updated baseline inventory of the community's GHG emissions. And then future emissions are forecasted based on current and proposed land uses, operations, and population in the community. Then the city determines and adopts GHG emission targets for upcoming years, including but not limited to this next state required year of 2030. And then based on the delta that's needed to reduce the forecasted emissions to the target levels, strategies such as measures and actions are identified for the various sectors. And then funding is identified and the measures and the actions are implemented by the determined sectors and associated timelines determined to be necessary. And then finally, the city will continue to monitor and track the community GHG emissions and progress related to implementation of the CAP update itself. Next slide. I guess I'll turn it back over to Brent.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelsey. Thank you, Brenna. So as we shift away from the high level overview of the three components of the overall update that the City of San Ramon is undertaking, I want to shift gears into what I like to call stay informed. And this is just an overview of the public outreach and where you can keep track of the project, provide feedback, as well as review deliverables once they are out for public review. So I want to call your attention to the logo on the screen. This is the logo for the overall update for the general plan, housing element, and climate action plan. The reason why I'd like to emphasize this is that this is going to be your recognizable feature of the project. So wherever you see this, whether it's on the city's website, whether it's on the Plan San Ramon website, which I will touch on in a moment, whether it's in a newsletter or a flyer you see around the city, when you see this, this means that whatever you're looking at is associated with this update. So become familiarize yourself with this moving forward, since this signifies the project that we're starting this evening. So I want to just shift your attention to the Plan San Ramon website. So plansanramon.com. This is the overall website for the entire project. So anything related to the general plan, the housing element, the CAP, that will all be on this site. Any notifications for public meetings, when documents are out for review, if there are any interactive polls or exercises for community members to take part in to solicit feedback on different components of this project, this will be your one-stop shop. I do want to point out that on the website, there are these two tabs. There's the orange and the green. The orange tab is to sign up for our email list. So as part of this project, there will be regular e-blasts, what we like to call them. And what those are is those go out every time there is a public meeting, we notify you. Every time a deliverable is going out for public review, we notify you. So for example, tonight's meeting, there would be an e-blast that would go out to your email if you sign up, and it would keep you in tune of what to expect on the project and where you can join additional public outreach events throughout the next year and a half, 2 years. I will say that when you sign up for this, not only is our consultant team notified that you signed up, the city is notified as well, so we can make sure that you are able to track this project for transparency going forward. The green tab, this is the comment box. What we'd like to do is leave the door open for comments all times of the day, all times of night. If anything pops in your head on the general plan, or you have a question or a comment, or want to provide feedback on any of the outreach events we've had, we ask that you provide your comments here. These comments, I will tell you, they go straight to my inbox as the project manager, and they go into the city's inbox as well. So we do see these. On some projects, it's not uncommon for someone to get an idea about a policy. I've had emails come in at 2 a.m. with some great ideas from community members. So any ideas or concepts that you want to put forward for this update for either of the three components, I just invite you to go to the Plan San Ramon website and submit a comment. What we will do throughout this process is consolidate all of those comments, and we will regularly provide those as updates to the Planning Commission and City Council, so they too can see these as we move through the process. So for those who were not able to attend this evening, we don't want to leave them out. We're in the world of Zoom lately, and so we want to make sure that we provide inclusive outreach for everybody. So after tonight's meeting, we will provide an online survey. It'll go live next week on the Plan San Ramon website. So we invite all of you to tell your coworkers, your neighbors, your friends, business leaders, spread the word. It'd be great for everyone to fill out this survey. It's going to ask questions based on the three components to start to get your expectations for the update, and ask some more informed questions about how you think San Ramon should face its challenges, or how it should tackle opportunities moving forward throughout the next 10 to 15 years. So check back next week. The online survey will be there. It'll be up for about 30 days. So as we conclude our presentation, we're going to open this up for general questions from the public. So what we're going to do is, if you have a question, one, you can type your question in the QA box in Zoom if you're familiar with that. Or what you can do is you can use the raise hand feature in Zoom. It should be on the bottom of your screen as a hand. You can click on that. A city staff member will see that pop up, anyone on the panelist side, and then we will unmute you and you can ask your question. What we will do is tonight we will document every question that comes in, And next week, when the survey goes live, we will actually post all the questions that came out of tonight's meeting and then a response to those. So all questions will be transparently shown, and comments will be posted and responses next week. I'm going to end this presentation here. And then I'll pass this back to Cindy, who will start the questions from the community if there are any.
Great. Thank you, Brent, and thank you, Brenna and Kelsey. I just want to remind those in the audience, for those calling in, you can press *9 to request to speak. We're going to open it up for comments from the public. I currently see one hand up, so I will go ahead and bring them in to talk. Call in user 1. If you want to go ahead and unmute.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
So I just want to be very honest. This is a communist and a convoluted plan. There is no way our city can succeed because the housing plan and the carbon methane emission plan conflict with each other. It's like you're telling a student to work hard, and yet you keep taking the students out to play. It's not going to work, because the more people you put in through affordable housing, the more carbon emission it will produce. This is a great plan for those in Sacramento to make money, by helping the electric car companies, just like Governor Newsom had already appropriated $1 billion of our tax money to BYD, an electric car company maker, to make masks. This is ridiculous. It is setting us up for failure. And why do I say it's communist? Because it is overstepping their authority as state to the municipal authority. What's the point of the city government existence if we have to take from the state about our zoning governance, which is the sole power of the municipality? This is absolutely communist, and it's not going to be achievable, because let me ask the presenter who talked about the carbon emission. What do you know is the San Ramon's current carbon and methane emission? Give me a number. If you don't have that number, this is a fraud. If you don't know currently what is our emission, you cannot mandate for us to improve. Just like a teacher, if I don't know where a student's academic level is, I cannot help the student improve his academic situation. This is absolutely a fraud disguised as climate, package, but it's indeed a commercial, very well packaged commercial and a business deal for those elitists in Sacramento. I really feel sorry for you guys. I am not going to advocate for this plan at all. It is ridiculous. It is setting us up for failure based on fraud. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, we have another speaker with their hand raised, Jamila Buckner. I will go ahead and bring her into the chat. Jamila, go ahead, and you've been unmuted. Jamila, I see that you've unmuted yourself, but we can't hear you. So not sure if there's an audio issue on your end. We're still not able to hear you. Going to bring you back into the attendees. Perhaps maybe you can just try taking a look at your settings, and we'll
Can you hear me now?
I can.
All right, great. Sorry about that.
No
I
problem.
just had a quick question. You were talking about the housing plan and the affordable housing. Do we know what the AMI is for San Ramon, the average median income?
We do. Let me just bring that up really quickly. AMI is based on, is going to be based on area median income, and that's dependent on Contra Costa jurisdiction. And there are different AMIs based on household size.
Mm-hmm.
Let me do-
I was just trying to get a comparison. You were giving percentages, like for very low income was 31% of AMI. And I was just wondering if there was a number to base that on to get a sense of that as an example.
There is, let me just, I don't have that up on my screen, so just bear.
And that's okay. You can maybe add it to the Plan San Ramon website.
Great.
I plan to join it. So that's great. I just wanted to ask that question. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Okay. And I don't see any additional hands raised. Again, for those in the audience wishing to speak, this would be a good opportunity to raise your hand. We can certainly, as Brent mentioned, take additional comments after tonight's meeting through email or sending in your comments on the city's plansanramon.com webpage. So Brent, I don't see any other hands up.
Well, any comments that we've got tonight, we will catalog and post online and have a response to that next week. So it's just a reminder to everyone attending this evening, we will have a survey that'll go online next week, and then we'll work with city staff to get a recording of this as well. So if you weren't able to attend tonight, or friends or family or coworkers weren't able to attend, they too can look at this presentation moving forward. So I just appreciate everybody taking time out of their evening to hear us out on this project, and we're all looking forward to working with you over the next 2 years on both on all three efforts, I should say, not both. But so I appreciate it. So Cindy,
Thank you, everybody. Good night.
have a great night.